on each and every order you place with us. The options are endless. So start shopping today. Still have questions? Feel free to give us a call on 430-1300 or send us an email, mygroceryboy@gmail.com. One of our specialists would be happy to assist you. All email inquiries are answered within 24 hours. My Grocery Boy, St. Vincent's first online grocery store. Contact us today on www.mygroceryboy.net.
Introducing a new world of internet connectivity and digital entertainment. Yes, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is here. Spectra Plus announces our internet service and digital cable TV service. Internet plans starting at 15 megabits. Over 80 channels of digital television, including high definition. SVG, we have you covered. Fast, reliable broadband and a television for your home or business. Services starting as low as $59 and discounted bundles starting at $111. Coming soon. Call us today, 451-2551, or come into our sales office at Beachmont or Beckway Tech Center on Beckway. Spectra Plus TV, internet better.
You are listening to Bay Hill Network.
Nice Radio's Kalulu presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, they are certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio, first aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m., with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. You can catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. You can check us out on Facebook and YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Today, dear friends, is Saturday. It is the 21st day of November 2020. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another edition of your favorite program, Just Another Look. In this week's program, we focus our attention on the New Democratic Party and the recently concluded general elections. Of course, as always, listeners to this program are free to agree or disagree on the comments that are made, because it is clearly my own analysis. It is designed not to be partisan, but to examine critical issues, applying our critical thinking skills with the intention of arriving at informed decisions about governance in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and other issues that impact our country. We have seen the state of affairs in the United States of America. And one would imagine that we are learning from it. And while it appears distant, it is in fact closer than you think. Because so many Vincentians have relatives in the United States and who are impacted by what is taking place there. In the world today, we have access to information at an amazing pace. Almost anything that we want to know, we can access within a relatively short period of time. It is important for us, therefore, to allow ourselves the opportunity to learn more about this world in which we live, to learn of our interconnectedness, and to learn from the experiences of others, wherever they may be, as they could be useful in determining how we live, how we impact our society, and the foundations that we would lay for successive generations. So the idea of this program is to examine the NDP and the recently concluded elections, because it is important always to engage in some sort of analysis after these events have taken place. Just another look is uncertain as to whether or not the New Democratic Party will itself engage in a comprehensive, scientific analysis of what just happened in the general elections. But importantly, what happened within the party that allowed for the results that were obtained. Jomo Thomas has written his view and has indicated that the party has to look at itself. It has to understand that it is engaged in politics. And he himself, having failed at the polls some time ago, has a very clear understanding of what it is to interface with the electorate and how things are done. Of course, in another place, he had much to say about the party that he was representing. Just Another Look had said from the very beginning he had no business there. But there he was. But his points in the program that he has written about in the edition of the 20th of November 2020 is an important read. And people should look at it for what it is. So here we go with our program. Because it is not enough for the New Democratic Party to pat itself on the back for having garnered the popular vote. The popular vote is important, but it does not guarantee you success. So saying that you won the popular vote only takes you thus far and no further. The fact is that under our first past the post system, you lose. You have lost, and you've lost one more seat than you had previously. So that must be a bothersome thing. It must be worrying that you have lost one more seat and you've moved from an 8-7 situation to a 9-6 situation. That does not augur well for you. So just Another Look begins its analysis by saying that the New Democratic Party is caught up in a leadership crisis. There is a crisis of leadership within the New Democratic Party. We made mention of it earlier in the year. We will address more of it today. Who is the political leader of the New Democratic Party? Forget about the formal structure that emerged from the previous elections at the party's convention. Let's forget about that for a minute. Let us be open. Let us be brutally honest with ourselves. Let us be objective in our analysis. Who exactly is the leader of the New Democratic Party? We know that in the official elections, Godwin Friday won. But is he really the leader of the party? We understand to the extent to which the party has attempted to create a sort of maximum leader image of Friday so that it becomes Friday's party the way it was James Mitchell's party. So Friday is made to loom larger than life over the party, just as was the case with Mitchell and just as is the case with Ralph Gonsalves. You can't seem to find a picture to put them ordinary. They have to make them larger than life. Because that is one of the problems with politics in the Caribbean. And we just follow along. But in reality, the de facto leader of the New Democratic Party is what we are asking. So just another look at the risk of being heavily criticized in several quarters is daring to suggest to you today that while the delegates of the New Democratic Party have elected Godwin Friday to lead that organization, we do not see him as the de facto leader of that institution, certainly not after what we just saw in the most recent general elections. Just another look will dare to suggest that what we saw in the most recent general elections is the return of James Mitchell to take leadership, to take hold of the reins of the New Democratic Party. That is what we saw. Unfortunately for him, it was not a triumphal return, which he thought it might have been, because he started talking about he on the ground and he knows how people think and Gonsalves likely to go. But he didn't. So there's not a triumphal return. But it was a return nonetheless to take hold of the main levers of leadership of the New Democratic Party. And that in and of itself created a problem for the New Democratic Party. It may not admit it, but that is what happened. You see, just another look dares to suggest that James Mitchell is the de facto and perhaps effective leader of the New Democratic Party. And that this has been the case since Arnhem Eustace left. We argue that Mitchell was happy to see the back of Arnhem Eustace and happy to see one like himself assume the position of leader of the party, and gradually began to wield higher levels of influence in the party. You see, there has not been any love lost between Eustace and Mitchell for a very long time. And perhaps that was the case with good reason. For one thing, Eustace was very clear on his color. He was very clear of his understanding of what it means to be black in the Caribbean, or what it means to be black in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. He understood that very clearly. And he understood the struggle, the history of black people and their struggles for leadership. He understood the importance as a black man of striving to excel in any field of endeavor. And given his experience at the Caribbean Development Bank, once Eustace returned to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and agreed to run for office for the New Democratic Party, he was very clear that he wanted to have nothing to do with the Nanos, Thierry Nano and his family. He did not want to have anything to do with them. And of course, as you know, dear listeners, that was in stark contradiction to the apparent relationship that James Mitchell had, and perhaps even at one time Attorney General Parnell Campbell. and apparently some other members of the party. You see, there's a thing about people who have money, or who are perceived to have money. There's a tendency for them to attract people like flies, right? There are a number of people in this country, including some businessmen, who are anxious to be part of Mr. Wise's shenanigans in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They were frequenters of his place. They were frequenters of his parties on yachts. And as soon as he got into trouble, they all disappeared. They wanted to avoid being associated with Mr. Wise. But Vincentians know them. And Wise knew why he was appealing and appealed to them. He knew why they were buzzing around him like flies. In the same way, many buzzed around the nanos. Yeah? And Eustace made it clear he didn't want to be any part of them. And that is why when those who forged those letters that claimed all these people had owed nanos, etc., those who forged those letters, some of whom are still involved in government employment, and they know themselves, who perhaps should have been jailed for fraud. And Eustace says, not me. Glenn Fitzgerald said, not me. We ain't borrowed no money from no Terry Nano or no nanos. Right? So Eustace made it very, very clear, very early, he didn't want to have anything to do with the nanos. And that was in contradiction to the relationship Mitchell appeared to have had with the nanos. But that too was before Mitchell and the nanos had a fallout. Okay? Eustace's experience and information at the time prevented him from ever wanting to even so much as meet any member of the Nano family, far less to engage them in conversation, and even far less to discuss issues of national development with them. Nothing to do with them. But things are funny. And you know, if you had followed the history, the Nanos and the Mitchells had a fallout. And Nano broke from his support with the New Democratic Party. And you may recall that a newspaper suddenly appeared in St. Vincent and the Grenadines called The Herald. The Herald. And it became something of a whipping board against James Mitchell and the New Democratic Party. And you may also recall that at the opening of the Caribbean Imaging business in New Montrose, in Stony Ground, it was a surprise to many that Nano was involved. And you may recall that when Nano got up to speak, he said, and we quote, "My father, my wife, and I are Vincentians by choice, not by chance." End of quote. And everybody listening had an understanding of precisely why at that particular time he had that message to send. Eustace was happy he had nothing to do with that gentleman or that family. So, Parnell Campbell, who rather suddenly exited from the position of Attorney General and said he had some personal matters to deal with, never really explained to the nation what were those personal matters and whether or not he had anything to do with the Nanos. And we asked Parnell Campbell if he had anything to do with the Nanos to the extent that he may have broken the laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines with regard to that relationship. He never answered. You don't expect him to use any of the law on you program to answer to that either. But the point you were making is that the same nanos that were once apparent buddies with the New Democratic Party during the time of Michel's reign broke with that, and issues emerged in the Herald that were very, very interesting. So there are those who suggest that Arnim Newsis never supported the Michel stance to increase the salaries of government ministers that was dubbed the Greedy Bill by Gonzalez and others. There are some who suggest he didn't support it, but he was a member of cabinet, and the cabinet approved it. And he was asked to pilot the bill through Parliament. Now it seemed one of the major contradictions in Eustace's politics, because he likes to be fair. And therefore, on the one hand, he was saying to public servants, we can't give you more than 13% over the next 3 years. And yet there he was, being the one to present the bill that became known as the Greedy Bill. And of course, while it was called the Greedy Bill then, subsequent bills during the ULP regime, you have to determine whether or not you should choose to call any of them an even greedier bill. So the challenge was to take a stand and not carry the bill, not be party to that, and consequently perhaps leave the party. And he made his judgment call, and he has to live with that. But there was no love lost between them. You saw it again when the decision was taken to accept to go to Grenada with Keith Mitchell to discuss a resolution to the street protests and the whatever. Mitchell went alone from government. Those who were on the streets had a trailer load of people. And it was interesting because one thought that the issues on the streets were with the teachers' union demanding 30%. That transformed into an odd thing, the Organization in Defense of Democracy, which nobody knew exactly what that was, and it died as soon as everything was over. They said they were going to stay in existence for the rest of their lives. But that didn't happen, because there are too many of the leftovers and the ruminants of the left involved in that. But nobody ever really thought that it was the opposition Unity Labour Party. Everybody was looking at Fitzjones and the people from the Nurses Association and so on. But then suddenly all these other unions either joined of their own volition or were coerced in one form or another to doing that. But when they were going to Grenada, suddenly Ralph Gonzalez assumes a major role. And what he's trying to figure out, in what capacity, because was he a member of the odd thing? Was the Unity Labour Party part of the odd thing? What was it? And at the end of the day, is who walking up and down the beach? Who walking up and down the beach to arrive at the final decision? You try and remember who walked on the beach for yourself. But we know that when they came back, Eustace met Mitchell at the airport, at the E.T. Joshua airport. And Mitchell announced the terms and conditions that constituted the Grand Beach Accord. And that included having elections no later than the 31st of March of 2001. Yep. So Mitchell may well have been corporation sold because he in charge of the NDP, he in charge of the government, and eventually he opted out, gave up the party, and later gave up government. Yeah? So that is a brief piece of history. But the reason we are putting this here is because just another look wants to show you that once Arnhem Eustace became the leader of the party, he felt that his leadership was required. And that he was not going to be kowtowing to James Mitchell. Yes, you are the founder of the party. Yes, you were a leader of the country and the party for a long time. But I'm not going to be sitting at your feet with you patting my head to give me the direction and determine exactly where we should go as an institution. Because you have served. And now I am serving. And therefore it is important that I have an opportunity to take for myself control of the levers of leadership within the organization. One got a sense from analyzing that period that Mitchell was not particularly comfortable, that many people felt that he may have come across as having a feeling of loss of control of an institution that he built. So you have an understanding as to why we stay at the beginning. We said at the beginning of this program that in respect of the leadership, Mitchell would have been happy to have seen the likes of Godwin Friday elected leader of the party. They had a lot in common. They were from the Grenadines and they were from Beckwith. They were also of a similar complexion. Important. Very important. Because in this country we tend to underplay the reality of color. Something that we do to our detriment. We pretend it does not exist. We pretend it is of no consequence. And that is to our own folly. You see, the election of Godwin Friday to the leadership of the New Democratic Party, especially given his complexion and life experience, would probably have more readily allowed for an alliance between himself and James Mitchell, to the point even of a sort of obeisance that would and could never have occurred between Mitchell and Eustace. Could never have occurred between Mitchell and Eustace. More importantly, the color factor may well have led to a respectful approach to politics, even between Gonzalez and Friday, in a way that was never seen between Eustace and Gonzalez. For example, you remember when Gonzalez was going up against Eustace, and during the time of Eustace's leadership of the New Democratic Party, we heard about who George Bush would have recognized if he came in the middle of the night and Eustace and Ralph were together. Alright? The middle of the night, George Bush, a white man, coming, Gonzalez, fair skin, and Eustace black as the ace of spades. Who George Bush would recognize. And we said here that we felt that spoke to the color. That spoke to the color question. We felt that way, and we still do. We also heard about reference of the choice in the election was between Jesus and Barabbas. Well, we don't know Was he referring to himself as Jesus and Eustace as Barabbas? The references to who have and who didn't have hair. All those kinds of little bits of intrigue that we felt here just another look were references to Annim Eustace's color. And by extension, references to a significant proportion of Vincentians, many of whom were not prepared to see it that way, and still are not prepared to see it that way. But you have never heard any of those kinds of comments being made, any of those disparaging comments being made in respect of Friday since he got into office. Yeah? Because they were of the same kind in terms of complexion. He, Friday, and Gonzalez. So the real question now is, after examining the way things went with the NDP in the most recent elections, James Mitchell may have had a hand in the determination of much of the strategies of the campaign, and perhaps along with a select few favorites than the current official leader of the party. That James Mitchell was the one to indicate, for example, the pending change in the NDP's colors may well be seen as an indication of just how much he may have taken control of the party again. Maybe he wanted everyone to be mindful that it is his party. It is his party. So we did not get the issue of the colors from Friday, the party leader. We got it from what we call the de facto leader, James Mitchell. Eyewitness News of 29th September 2020 makes reference to a comment by James Mitchell saying, quote, "To target the swing voters, we have to break up this tribalism in St. Vincent between red and yellow. And our t-shirts this time will be white." End of quote. Now, hello. This is not coming from the elected party leader. This is coming from the founder, who we deem to have been the de facto leader in the most recent general elections. Something as fundamental as the party's colors. Yes, he was the one that made the call with yellow. The building has been painted in yellow, their headquarters. Everyone knows that the party's color is yellow. And yet on the eve of the general elections, Mitchell announces that the t-shirts for this year will be white. He does that. There's no consultation with no party, nothing that we know of. How many people within the party, faithful, knew that the colors were being changed? But he announced it. And he announced the rationale for it. That he's saying that that is his attempt at breaking up the tribalism between yellow and red. So how he reached in a position of authority within the New Democratic Party on the eve of general elections to dictate or to be the one to make the announcement, A, that the colors change for this year's election, and B, that it is designed to break up the tribalism between yellow and red. That's not the tribalism, my friend. The tribalism has to do with the political institutions themselves and what they have been selling to the nation. The politics of division. That is where the tribalism has come. The politics practiced by the political parties is what gives rise to the tribalism, not the colors. The colors are just evidence of the underlying problem. But the point we are making here is the fact that he was the one to make the announcement should have suggested to the general membership there is something amiss here. James Mitchell is back and talking hither, thither and yon as though he is the de facto leader of the party and of the election campaign. That speaks to what many may have perceived as a weakness of leadership on the part of Godwin Friday. So while on the one hand, the party was projecting Friday as the new maximum leader for the organization, the real maximum leader was behind him, speaking whenever he felt like, saying whatever he felt like, which may well have, given his experience in politics, overshadowed the elected leader of his own party. So one is unclear as to how the change in party colors could be equated with breaking up the tribalism between red and yellow. Only Mitchell could probably tell you that. But one wonders whether Mitchell, knowing that Arnim Eustace is no longer in charge, one has to wonder whether Mitchell had already gotten in his possession the white t-shirts. Maybe that decision was already made before. That is a question that we need to ask. Was it? Was it that he felt that, give me the way things are going, that he should have been earlier engaged? So everyone knows that party colors are traditional in party politics, and to suggest otherwise, breaking with that tradition on the eve of general elections, just does not make good political sense. You see, politicians have a way, particularly when they've been in office for a while, to see themselves almost as infallible. We've always said that about Gonzalez. They talk a whole lot of rubbish and hope that because they've been in office for some time, people take them as most knowledgeable on all these issues.
This is
But the reason we ask our listeners to always apply their critical thinking skills is to know when they're talking rubbish and to be able to tell them they're talking rubbish. And this was a piece of rubbish. That you bring white jerseys because the time has come from your vantage point to break up what you see as the tribalism in the country. The tribalism is between red and yellow. Wow, what an amazing analysis. Just Another Look is making the argument that the role that Mitchell played in the NDP's elections campaign should be a cause of concern for those who are desirous of determining who exactly is in charge of the wheels of leadership within the New Democratic Party that Mitchell founded. That should be part of your analysis of the elections and your fortunes in the most recent elections. It might be too easy for you to say, we get the popular vote. And you have some of your members already saying, those who want their seats, we are in the majority. Hello, be careful with that. Because our electoral system says nothing about proportional representation. It says first past the post. So you may have had the majority vote, but the other party, the ruling party, had the majority seats in the House. The other party controls the cabinet. That's part of our reality. One has to be clear, you know. Because while a political party ought to be respectful to its founder, ought to appreciate and be mindful of the role that he played in the organization, the political party must nonetheless be alive. It must be dynamic. It must be open to change. It must be allowed to develop. It must be allowed to afford critical thinking and objective analysis of what it is doing every step of the way, even if it wishes to be faithful to the fundamentals of its origins. Otherwise, the party becomes stymied. It gets stuck in a sort of time warp, which is what is happening to the ULP. The Gonzalez mystique has long since faded, but the party faithful believe in it. They believe in it. And they resist the fact that it has waned. They do not wish to see it. They are none so blind as those who do not wish to see. So to the party faithful, Gonzalez can do no wrong. That's why so many people flock to the rape rally. He can do no wrong. Yeah? Isn't that what you're seeing in the United States, where Trump is saying to his people, the only way I could lose is if they cheat? That's what he said. So we have to understand that a party, if it is to be worth the salt, must be dynamic. It must always be engaging in critical self-analysis, monitoring and evaluating its performance over and over again, and determining in a flexible situation exactly how it will respond to factors impacting and requiring change. It is unacceptable for the party, any political party, to allow itself to be so stymied by its founder that it runs the risk of becoming less relevant, less viable than it ought to be. Parties are formed in order to access governance. That's why political parties are formed. But if you're not doing the necessary work, it's not going to happen. You're going to be committed to being in opposition as opposed to being in leadership. The New Democratic Party must learn from the ULP in respect of the significant decline in the viability of a Ralph Gonzalez, who himself does not appear to understand his growing irrelevance and unpopularity. So for all intents and purposes, the party is prepared to die with him. That is the ULP's reality. The party is prepared to die with Ralph. And they have given themselves over to that. They don't care. That's it. Let us enjoy it while it lasts, because for some, it might be their whole lifetime. That's it. That's it. There's no genuine commitment to any ideological position that Gonzalez has put forward. He could talk now till his face turned blue. Nobody is concerned about Gonzalez's ideological position. Nobody in the political party that he leads, the ULP, has any interest in Gonzalez's ideological position. That is why the Rennick Rose and so on are shunned aside. Because while they may still think of their own ideological stances, Gonzalez has no interest in what they think, or so it appears. And the bulk of the party had no interest in Gonzalez's ideological position. All they're interested in is that they get the opportunity to benefit from the available political and economic largesse. And they know that once they give their support, they're good. That is why the man who would be king could behave the way he does. He could call into a radio station and threaten to shoot Pie and Paper Alexander had you been on the spot then, and get away with it, because nobody cares. That's why Carlos James could feel, now that he's a minister, that he could do just about anything, because he fired off a pistol in a public place in 2015 and got away with it. So there is a sense of entitlement that has emerged within the bowels of the Unity Labour Party as a result of the leadership style. As a result of having allowed yourself to become wrapped up in the maximum leadership concept and the foolishness that it portrays. But in looking at the New Democratic Party, you may ask, what about Sinclair Leacock? What about Daniel Cummins and their role in the last general elections? Well, look, Leacock is the vice president. Cummins is the chairman. These two gentlemen are particularly aggressive. They're aggressive. They're aggressive in their life, they're aggressive in politics. Right? They are particularly aggressive. And it is the reason why so many NDP supporters believe that the way to deal with Ralph Gonzalez is to have aggressive people. And that's why some wanted Leacock to be the leader over Friday. But you listen to the radio program and you realize how much NDP supporters like Gonzalez, like Leacock and Cummins, because they see them as aggressive. And they feel that you need to be aggressive if you're going to deal with Ralph. But therein may very well lie the problem. Therein may very well lie the problem. Because there are some who say Leacock might just be too aggressive. And others who say that Leacock may well lead in a direction that they may not be comfortable with. There are some who suggest maybe he has too many skeletons in the closet. Those are issues, we're talking frankly here, those are issues that emerge. On the other hand, there are those who believe that Cummins is too thin-skinned. And that in Parliament, Ralph has learned which pressure points to touch. And then Cummins gets upset, he riles up, and virtually behaves in a manner sometimes as if he's about to lose control. So people are worried about that, which is how Friday emerged as the more somber, quiet individual coming through the middle of those two. That's our analysis. That's how Friday emerged as leader ahead of those two. It may be difficult for the party's delegates to choose either of those two, in spite of the belief deep down that their aggression, properly targeted, properly harnessed, would respond more appropriately to Gonzalez. But that Friday doesn't have that punchline. He doesn't exude that kind of dynamic leadership that they believe they want. But they see him as more somber, more appealing to the broader membership, more appealing to the broader society. After all, we still believe that people of lighter skin should be leading us all the days of our lives. Remember Larry Bascom used to say that, he used to say, time enough, a black man get to run our country. Because he had 17 years of James Mitchell. Yeah? And then you come and you have 20-something, you have 30-something years of Ralph Waldo. You ain't got no black people in the country that could lead. That's a question that the New Democratic Party has to ask itself. That's a question that anyone wanting to get into politics in St. Vincent and the Grenadines must ask oneself. Because the left and the ruminants of the left have missed the boat on that. They've never seen color as important. They deny it while becoming beneficiaries of it. But it is interesting because there are challenges looming on the horizon. Israel Bruce is prepared to be dynamic and preparing himself for leadership. Kay Bacchus Batiste is also preparing herself for leadership. So it is not that the party will stay loose, it is that the existing order will be challenged. And so it should be, because it is a dynamic process. You don't just assume that it will stay that way. You have to be forever retooling. But then, there was the matter of the selection or quote election of candidates. Look, in any organization, leadership have preferences. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to understand that if you put a process in place, then people expect you to follow the process. We have dealt with the situation of Kirk De Silva, and our position remains the same. If the party didn't want him, they should have told him that up front and said, "Oh, but run, because we have something else in mind." Right? They could easily have said that. But they embarrassed themselves, they embarrassed the organization. They showed a significant sign of weakness in the way they handled the selection process in Maripor. The party has only itself to blame for what is easily a major faux pas. It has only itself to blame. They have to walk with that as the monkey on the back. Okay? You manage your process. What you do must remain within the party. But what you did in Maripor made a mess and showed the nation that you weren't quite as organized and as structured and as coordinated as you would have liked to be. By the time that Silva and others were brought to the Central Committee for discussion with the leadership, etc., going to that forum, they knew that the die had already been cast. They knew before they got there what the party decision was, because the party decision they felt would have been made before they even had the election within the Maripor constituency. They knew that. They knew that. And so it remains a smear on the leadership, both in terms of individual leadership as well as the collective leadership, to say nothing of the concept itself of what constitutes leadership and how it is processed in an organization. The party has to take responsibility for that, and it impacted the outcome of the elections. Then there's the issue of the NDP campaigns. There is a sense in which the New Democratic Party campaigned for the general elections that the strategy was not anywhere near what it could have been and should have been. Very ill. In a sense, many of the candidates operated in silos. We have in the past made that comment. In the past, we said there were occasions when Leacock appeared to be mounting his own campaign, and when Linton Lewis appeared to be mounting his own campaign. That seemed to be a problem with the New Democratic Party. They can't seem to get it right in terms of ensuring that we are all on the same page when you're preparing for the elections. It cannot appear that one set of people doing one set of things, saying one set of things, and doing one set of things, while the others are doing something else. They are operating in silos. It's one party. It's one party. It's one approach that you're taking. So you may be critical of Raul Gonzalez and the Unity Labour Party, but you also have to understand that they allow for nobody else going their own route. Not on a platform, and not within the party. They create a line of march and you have to hold on to it, because you're going to win as a party. You're not going to win as an individual. The one criticism you have for the ULP in the depth of the political campaigns is they all wrap it wrong, Papa. And because of that, the culture that they have built once Papa go in the party mash up. That's it. That's what they have created, much to their own detriment. Right? So that is why, even though clearly he's not even a shadow of himself, he is obese, decidedly so, he cannot give up, because he realizes that within the own party, this pressure being built for the party to go beyond him does not allow him to readily relinquish that leadership, because perhaps he has his own ideas as to where he wants the leadership to go. That happens when you stay around too long, because you believe that it is so much everything depends so much on you, that even who you bless should be the one to whom everything is bequeathed. So the campaign had this problem of a sense in which individuals were operating rather than a cohesive unit. Yeah? And so when it came to issues, you saw it work out. In politics, timing is everything. The problem is oftentimes many politicians have no real sense of timing. They misread it altogether. This was clearly evident in the NDP's use of the information that it possessed regarding the poverty assessment report. Once the party got the report, it should have immediately led to the party convening a retreat, bringing relevant expertise, analyze it, look at its implications for the country, how you can use it as a party to advance your cause, and to produce a set of recommended strategies to bring it to the electorate in a manner that helps swing them from the ruling ULP to yourself. But that didn't happen really, because what emerged was a Daniel Cummins declaring, I am telling you to release that report, or I will release it. Not the party, not the us will release it, not the we will release it. I. Bad for business in politics. I will release it. You're not the party leader. You may be chairman of the party, but you're not the party leader. So the fact that you are making that statement on the platform suggests that there is not this coordinated approach to addressing this matter as it should be. Yeah? It's the same criticism we had with regard to the NCB Bank's sale that with Eustace and Leacock some years ago. Eustace was saying, let's hold, and then voila, Leacock spoke first and says, well, we did this, and look what happened here, blah, 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 blah. He was not the leader of the party. And so, unwittingly, it gives the electorate the impression that there's a lack of confidence in the leadership, whether that may be real or imagined. And so it's the same thing. So Cummins is out there virtually threatening the government. Release the information or I will release it. Not me, the party. I will release it. And he kept saying that. And there were consequences for that approach. Cummins, the chairman of the party, like a lone ranger, using the possession of the report to threaten the ruling regime that they should have the privilege of releasing it, or else he, not the party, would do so. There was no political value to this threat. And instead, it may well have botched the political currency that the contents of the report could have had in favor of the New Democratic Party if handled differently. Because the contents of the report, as we have subsequently learned, should have served as a catalyst for bringing the electorate onto the side of the New Democratic Party. But instead, by Cummins keep announcing and letting the ruling regime know that he has the report. And the ruling regime, of course, must know the content of the report. They always did. Alright? So, what that did was unwittingly the New Democratic Party's decision to allow Cummins to spend valuable time threatening the ULP administration with release of the report also give the ULP administration enough time to plan a strategy to counteract it. And that's why we are telling you that is why the ULP was able to pump more resources in the areas that were identified in the report as being more impoverished. You gave them the opportunity to do that. They didn't have to answer you, just that they didn't, until they felt it was time, after they had put measures in place. So by the time you got around, in places like Central Leeward in particular, for example, by the time you got around to trying to have your message impact them, they already get resources, they already get materials, they already get things that allow them to be, even if it's only for a short period of time, to feel satisfied that the ULP still cares about them. That's what your strategy allowed them to do. You gave them notice, you gave them time, they used it to their advantage. While you kept the thing in your head and pointing an accusing finger, and then what? Yeah? So while Cummins dilly-dallied, while the New Democratic Party dilly-dallied with Cummins with regard to report, serving notice to the Unity Labour Party what the intended use of the report was for them in the campaign, the ULP immediately sought to minimize the impact by its sharing of relief, however temporary, in a manner of speaking. You see, the foregoing action of the Unity Labour Party was also undertaken in other areas indicated in the report. And what else did you expect of them? What kind of analysis did you do? Did you think that they would know the content of the report and you giving them time to massage it? What you expected them to do? Not use that time to turn things around? So by the time the NDP got to really revealing the issues close to election, you had already lost the element of surprise, and you had already lost in fact, what any surprise element you had was to the electorate, who sat there wondering. So you had this all the time, and that's all you could do. Wait till we're about to vote to come and tell me. I don't even have time to imbibe it. It's like the manifestos. You're giving me bits and pieces of the report too close to my voting. I don't have enough time to imbibe it, evaluate it, and understand what you're telling me and how it impacts me. Because while you're telling me that I am receiving lumber, galvanized steel, and cement, you ain't giving me that. You're not giving me that. So while you may call me stupid and call me all kind of names, the fact of the matter is that you're telling me what is wrong with me, and they're telling me they're giving things to alleviate that while we wait for better things. That is how this system works. So the political currency that should otherwise have been a result of the release of the report was completely lost. The report had no impact on the voting patterns. None. Just Another Look's analysis wishes to also highlight the fact that to the astute observer and analyst, the New Democratic Party lacked cohesion in messaging. It lacked cohesion. One is not sure that even within the New Democratic Party there was a clear position, policy position, that the party wanted all of its candidates to win their respective seats. You didn't get that sense. The messaging varied. How in God's name was Fitz able to even conceptualize saying out loud, let alone say on a political platform, that you want to bring a toll booth on Sand Hill? Where did that come from? How did that come out of his mouth without it having been discussed at a party level? And that he had to come and apologize and say, well, this was said without discussion with the party, etc. That is the messaging problem. There has to be a line of march. Regardless of, that is the planning that has to be done. That is the nitty-gritty work that has to be done in politics. You have to know what is going to be said on any platform, anytime, by any one of your members. That is cohesion. That is organization. That is planning. But you go to a New Democratic Party and you know that all of them are going to come out against the ULP. But how they're going to articulate what aspect they're going to deal with is not a planned messaging. And the party suffered as a result of that. There was no harmonization of messaging. Consistently, Bramble went for the statistics. Consistently. And he compared the information, showing you why you should support the New Democratic Party, because it delivered more in terms of economic development of this country. Because development is about people and the well-being of people, not infrastructure. Right? He kept on message all of the time. All of the time. Never wavered. And that resonated with people. But it was not the same for most others. While on the political platforms, the NDP members said they wanted to win, one did not get the sense that this meant winning all the seats. It looked as if somewhere in its strategizing, it decided which seats it was winning. Despite all of the bravado in the aftermath of Laverne Vellox's showing at the polls against Camilo Gonzalez, Analysis of the campaign of the New Democratic Party suggests that her performance came as a shock even to them. They didn't put her down as a constituency to win. They underestimated the dislike of people in East St. George, for Camilo Gonzalez. They underestimated the value of the Yogi Farrell issue on the political fortunes of Camilo Gonzalez. The party underestimated the value of the internal squabblings of the Unity Labour Party with regard to any plans to make Camilo the heir apparent to Ralph Gonzalez. They completely underestimated that. So Laverne's success, coming in with less than 200 votes behind the favored son, was a surprise as much to the New Democratic Party as it was to the Unity Labour Party, as it was to Camilo himself, not to say anything about his father. So Laverne did not have the resources that were designed to make her win. And we could say that here without fear of contradiction. She did not have it. Because the apparent position was that we could, the Grenadines, the Kingston seats, and all of Leeward. That was the emphasis. From all the analysis, that was the emphasis. If you were looking for two extra things, you were probably thinking across the Dry River. Yeah, across the Dry River. And Central Leeward. Those are the two that you felt you were going to try to win. Because you wanted to win all of Leeward. If you won all of Leeward, all of Kingston, and all of the Grenadines, you won the election. Yeah? So it must be bothersome to you now that in spite of all of the resources you put in North Leeward, you lost it. You knew 5 years ago there was only 12 or so votes that separated you. You knew that before the election. 5 years ago you had to correct that. 5 years ago. And if you look at what has been done, you could say anything about money and this, that, and the other. Carlos James ended up doing more mobilization in the area than Patel did. That is the reality. That's why he won. Doesn't matter whether he won by 1 or he won by 51. The fact of the matter is that he took up the challenge. Over the 5 years, you saw a consistent trend. Right? The last time Just Another Look heard about the proposed cruise ship berth in North Leeward was 5 years ago. You heard it just on the eve of the election this year as you did 5 years ago. You didn't hear it during the 5-year issue. You didn't hear it being promoted during the 5-year issue. So there was not consistent messaging. We talk about Laverne and her surprise package for the party. Look at Noel Dixon. The last time Noel Dixon got beaten by 588 votes in South Central Windward. 588 votes. This time he was beaten by a mere 239. How much resources you gave Dixon to help him? There's a feeling within the New Democratic Party leadership corps. And they could argue it how much they want. They didn't believe that Dixon would go anywhere. And you know why? Because many of them believe that Dixon is too quiet. That Dixon is not a rabble-rouser. That Dixon is a Christian. And so he don't drink and he ain't interested in buying drinks and spending money on rum for people to vote for him. You hear that in the corners, in the corridors of the New Democratic Party. So how much resources did you give Dixon? There's an inconsistency in the allocation of resources. So the messaging that people were getting is different from what you may have intended to sell out, you know. The messaging that people received was that you didn't think Dixon going anywhere. And so He operated within the confines of whatever was available to him, just like Laverne Belloc did. And they both surprised the party as much as they surprised the opposition, the ruling regime. They surprised their own party the same way that they surprised it. You have to understand that. There has to be consistency of messaging. Consistency of messaging. And that was not there. Right? So, the campaign strategy of the NDP must have been to retain all of the seats in hand and target some others, at least 2. But the strategy was not properly well implemented. Okay? That was a particular issue. The NDP underestimated many of its own candidates as much as they did with regard to the electorate. Yeah? They underestimated the electorate. Clearly, the New Democratic Party failed to conduct the appropriate research as an ongoing feature of its politics over the 5 years between general elections. That's why during the elections, we said in 2014, the NDP was ready for the elections. That's why they had to fight in court. Because they knew they were ready, they were better prepared than the ruling Unity Labour Party in 2014. 1 year before the elections, they were ready. In 2020, they were scrambling to pull themselves together before the elections. Elections are not won in a few months. It is won over a rather lengthy process. And then the other weak area of the NDP's campaign was the use of media. The NDP has its own program that runs for the year, the New Times. Since the days of Lynch, Just Another Look has lamented the lack of structure, coordination, planning, evaluation, and monitoring of the New Times program. Nothing has been done to change it. There is no macro plan as to what is going to happen for the next 5 years. Between 2015 and 2020, how many times did the New Democratic Party sit down and determine where it wanted the radio program to go? How many times? Each week, what was the line of march that you wanted to carry? What was the message you wanted to carry? Or was it left to each person who takes on the media, who takes on the job, to do whatever they can to help the party? What was coming from the party to them in terms of the overall message? Not to call them the night before and say, we want you to stress this and we want you to stress that. That is not planning. That is the absence of planning. That is chaos. And so there was no evidence for the last 5 years of any structured approach to the New Times program. Again, messaging. Additionally, it appears as though the NDP was satisfied that New Times program is ours. How many times did they venture out to other media houses? What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? The only thing they could tell you is no, they don't want you on the program. But Nice Radio, while it is popular, has a limited listenership. And the New Times program, which is your program, has your party listenership. How do you access others? You have to get out of your comfort zone. So your media strategy, your public relations strategy, which was also very weak, right, goes beyond just social media. It is the entire spectrum of media. Media sources, media institutions, media platforms. Everything is part and parcel of the strategy. And that has to be planned, that has to be coordinated. At the beginning of the year, just as you have to do your budget, etc., and apply your budget, it's the same way with your media strategy. It has to be something that you know what you're going to be doing for the entire year. Occasionally, new issues may come up, and whoever is responsible for your media and public relations will sit with the leadership and say, okay, this has emerged, this is how we're going to deal with it, and then we will come back to our long-term strategy. But there is no strategy with regard to your media programs. No strategy with regard to your public relations program. Things are airy-fairy, dropping from the sky without any significant coordination that the electorate can see as something consistent and driven by an organizational leadership. That is not there. The content is not systematically worked out. So while certain people have certain days to come in on the program, what they're going to say or do is not sufficiently structured. We took too long as an electorate to know what you were doing. Your response to COVID, your response to dengue, you know, those things took just too long. How do we structure our approach? How do we structure our approach to health? How do we make that something that we get the community, the nation to be interested in? You can't just do it from one radio station. You have to make yourself available to the others. Harass them to get on the radio stations. Take the criticisms from callers on other radio stations. It doesn't matter. It is that you're out there consistently taking. James Mitchell is supposed to know that because he got a lot of blows in his days in politics, driving around in the little Volkswagen. But he did. He took it. He took all the blows. And he emerged victorious. Gonzalez know what it is to be on the losing side and for how long. But he took the blows. He went to every radio station that would have him. That is what you have to do likewise. There has to be monitoring and evaluation of your communications. That is not done. You don't get a sense that it is done. In the lead up to the election, there was politics on the road. First of all, it was just 3 days a week. Not enough. In 2000 and 2001, Ben Jackson, when he put on the afternoon program, was every afternoon, Monday to Friday. On your way home, you had to listen to Glenn Jackson. And the opposition at the time, ULP, made use of it. It has to be consistent, and there has to be consistent messaging. There wasn't in the politics on the road. It was not sufficiently structured. Good idea, but you needed it more frequently. It needed to be planned, and it needed to be structured. Okay? And how we read the results. The New Democratic Party lost the election. That's it, plain and simple. They lost the election. And they lost it even though you got the majority of the votes. Forget about what Gonzalez is saying about his people and coming out and vote. That is a lot of rubbish, right? He has nothing to say, so he's trying to say it. He needs to make himself relevant. He's not relevant. Nobody bothers with Raul Gonzalez anymore. They see him as a sped force in overdrive. In overtime, not overdrive, overtime. Yeah? So they know that he come in with the usual way of doing things. Right? He tried to filibuster about the poverty assessment report. It wasn't done properly. It had to be done over. It had all sorts of crazy things. It don't make a difference. He knows better than that. His biggest issue now is how to run the country. The party lost the election. The party needs to engage in a detailed, comprehensive, professional analysis that speaks the truth. There are too many selfish members that ran for election. Too many selfish individuals. Too many individuals who, while they're talking party and country, really talking about self. They're really talking of self. Their interest is themselves. The party knows who was working and who was not. And you could be working in your own interest. You could work hard and do a lot of things, but you may be doing it for the wrong reason. And a lot of that was happening in the political campaign. There are some people who became the know-it-all and who dictated the pace. But because there was not enough discussion in terms of strategy, in terms of truth, honesty, openness, transparency, accountability, the party lost the elections. It is not enough to be seen to be popular. It is not enough to say I visit all the households. It is that you have to be consistently doing the work. You have to have ears in every sector of the ground. You have to know when money is flowing in the community. You have to know when money is flowing into the community for political partisanship. You have to know who is making what moves. That's what politics is, you know. Because you want to access government. And you want to convince every member of the electorate, not some, all members of the electorate. And this nonsense that some of our analysts talk about, people switching from political party to one another. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem that is wrong is when it is done solely for selfish reasons. But if it's done genuinely, if it is done because of an understanding that this will give me a better opportunity to serve, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. People change professions. People change their spouses. We make changes in life. But we want to accept it in other spheres. It's alright, but we don't want to accept it when it happens in politics. They give you all kind of names and call you all sorts of things. But the same people come to give a lecture and they tell you about the importance of change and embracing change. They want you to change because they tell you it's time to change. But you can't change politics. Because that is how they believe. So their own contradictions, and that's part of the contradiction you found in what Thomas is saying in part in his article. There's some inherent contradictions in the argument that he's making. But there's some very valid points in what he's saying. The fact of the matter is, dear friends, the New Democratic Party lost the elections. That's it. That's it. Accept that. Now comes the hard work. First, the detailed, principled, honest analysis, scientific analysis as to what transpired, why we lost. And the beginning of a plan to assume the leadership of this country in 2025 by doing the following. In fact, the way things are going, the election might be called long before 2025. Because you can't keep operating on the basis at which we've been operating, where we literally fleecing Taiwan. We're literally living off of Taiwan, quite frankly. And as for the National Lotteries Authority, well, we can hear more about that soon, because that is another institution that has become a cash cow. But you have to understand, there is nothing that you can do to avoid doing the hard work. The office of research officer has to be filled by someone who is capable of doing the research and who does the research that the party needs in order to meet its mandate of trying to access governance. You need your research to be driving your programs, to be driving your radio program, to be driving what you say to each other. But you need a higher level of honesty. You need leadership. You need leadership that is significant, that is meaningful, that is not anybody's plaything. But you need honesty and a commitment by all to speak the truth. If you have to tell someone you're being selfish, tell them. Let them make a decision whether they want to continue being selfish or defend themselves or show you where you are wrong. But you have to go through that catharsis in order to become an institution that is worthy of the support of the electorate. You know, dear friends, I tell you, it is not easy to be in politics. Politics doesn't have to be the nasty game that they have made it out to be. It could be a good, decent thing, as Noel Dixon is showing. Noel Dixon is showing you they don't have to play the nasty game. Because you need to transform our society, ultimately. And if you can do it constituency by constituency, community by community, you may help to genuinely transform Vincentian society into what it could be and realize its potential. Noel Dixon has shown you that. Stay the course. Laverne Velox has received a tremendous amount of support, and with that, a sense of confidence. Across the Dry River, Ms. John has given her commitment. She's into it. And Montgomery knows. Montgomery knows. Galvanized him a lot. He knows what he escaped. But he won. But Ms. John is committed to saying, that's it. That's it. I'm going to deal with you from here on in. I am going to devote myself to this constituency, to this country, to effect meaningful change. That has to be the attitude. There is work to be done. You could get upset at the contents of the program, but say what? It is what it is. It is just another look. You know, today, dear friends, is the 21st day of November 2020. 5,069 days since the disappearance of J8VAX. Understand something clearly. On Thursday of this week now concluded, we observed the 14th anniversary since the disappearance of J8VAX. Dominic Gonzalez, Rashida Ibrahim, the occupants. One would ask today, 14 years later, does the then Minister of Airports and Seaports, Ralph Gonzalez, feel any sense of remorse? Do you feel any sense of remorse, sir, over what was fed to this nation as a report on the unfortunate incident? Do you? Do you even remember? Had it been one of your children, sir, would you have been satisfied with what was presented to us as a report on that incident? You see, that is part of our problem in this country. It is always different when it is not your family. When it is not your family, it is all right. But when your son got in an accident on a motorbike, all the issues of whether it was licensed, whether he had license or what have you, none of those things were addressed, you know. What was important was getting him out of the country at the earliest opportunity, the same day if not possible. When you had your own accident, you didn't spend much time here, you know. Cuba was the best option. It's your family. And that is fair that you want your family to receive the best. But find a way of delivering the best for the rest of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But we remember 14 years ago. And you know what is interesting? On the 16th of July in 2014, that is 6 years ago, and 8 years after the incident, Eyewitness News spoke up wrote, and we quote, Director of Airports Corsell Robinson told the inquest that the occupants of the plane, the pilot Dominic Gonzalez and passenger Rashid Ibrahim, died. End of quote. That's what Eyewitness wrote on the 16th of July 2014, 8 years after the disappearance of the aircraft. She said they died. But of course, since none of the bodies were ever recovered, it was difficult for the mother, Nisha Branca, to understand why they were making that statement. And so Eyewitness News quotes Nisha Branca on the 16th of July 2014, quote, what constitutes a reasonably fair inquiry? Representation from all parties concerned? I don't know. I would like to find out, said Branca, who was not informed that the inquiry would be held or about the outcome. End of quote. So the mother of one of those who was on the plane, who you're going to pronounce dead, without seeing a body, you pronounce them dead. And you conduct an inquiry and the mother of one of the occupants was not informed. That is justice. That is the way we do things in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This is SVG, so what should we expect? It should have come as no surprise that Branca then declared, I pray to God that all those involved from the head to the foot, that they all rot in hell. End of quote. Today, the 21st day of November 2020, marks 3,759 days since the disappearance of another SVGA aircraft, J8SXY, piloted by Suresh Lakram. It disappeared on the 5th of August 2010. Finally, as always, we remind you of what we perceive to be injustice. The death of the 19th of September 2008, 12 years ago, of Patricia Bowman as she was on her way to work. Heavy rains and a wall collapsed on her car. The wall belonged to somebody, for goodness sake. We have to go to court to prove that. Nobody had been held culpable. Nobody. And we call ourselves a Christian society. We have the Christian Council being able to say they're monitoring elections, and they remain silent on justice in respect of people's lives. How can anyone have confidence in you, they're members of the Christian Council? How can anyone have confidence in you when you are not speaking out on the daily injustices being experienced by Vincentians? How do you expect anyone to have confidence in you? On this day, the 21st day of November 2020, I can say to you, we pray for you, members of the Christian Council. We pray for you. Enough said. You've been listening to another edition of Nice Radio's Callaloo presentation, Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial, socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio, first aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. Remember, catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. Check us out on YouTube and Facebook. I am, of course, Keith Joseph.
This is Big Hill Network.